there, friends! Let's talk about the Batman episode 4, aka the audacity of men and their utter confusion when women fight back. This episode made me so mad. I hated this episode. I absolutely I loved it. Let me be very clear. I love this episode. This was the greatest episode of all time. This was the greatest piece of television cinema that I've seen in such a long time, but I hated it. You know what I mean? Like, viscerally, internally, in my soul, in my belly, I hated it. I hated what Sophia had to go through, but God, did I love this episode. I can't sum it up in anything other than the audacity of men. To see Sophia go through everything that she went through. I did I feel like a dissertation in the first episode on who the Hangman was, breaking down everything that Sophia went through. Because in comics, Sophia was the culprit. But to see that someone that she loved and who she trusted, and someone, her father, like, this is full-on spoilers at this point. If you are not privy to the episode, pause the video, go back. I'm only talking spoilers in this video. I really want to break down and have a conversation with you guys on what this episode means to women and why I truly mean what I say when I say the audacity of men. To bring Sophia, because Sophia's been in the Falcone, she's a Falcone. She was born in the Falcone, and we see the difference of, without having certain anatomy parts, the difference of privilege. Born in this very Italian mafia style family, it is very clear that the men, it's a patriarchal system. The men are in charge, and the men have the privilege passed down to them, and the women have to have these side roles that just help the men succeed even more. And to have the father look her dead in the eye after seeing Alberto just being Alberto. He's got privilege, he's got money, he knows that he is the successor of the family, and so he gets to party, he gets to have fun. He isn't treating that role with the dignity that it deserves. You know, he's asked to do simple tasks, and he does not fulfill those tasks in however length of time he's been given, and constantly puts it off and says, oh, it'll happen, don't worry, Pops, it'll happen. But then to have, you know, Sophia, who is the pillar of everything he wants in a successor and in a daughter and in a child and a progeny, just everything he wants. The head of the Falcone family looks her dead in the eye. Papa looks her dead in the eye and says, you know what, why don't we break with tradition? The family will do exactly what I tell them to do. And in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, Papa, thank you. Like, finally, we're breaking past these stereotypical roles of the son has to succeed the father and the daughter is just there as a trophy. And it seems like we're moving in a positive direction. And then for Sophia, a woman, to question her father once, to question her father one time, to ask her father, then why were there scratches on your arm? I feel like that could have gone in a completely different direction. It could have just been, oh, I'm sorry, Sophia, your mother had mental issues. Whether it's true or not, you know, Sophia, this is what we need to do in the family. Sometimes there are people, even the closest people to us will betray us, but the family comes first. It could have been a lesson. And I know that I'm like preaching to the negative choir, to the anti-choir right now, and saying, you know, this is how we build a family and a dynasty, because that's what the Falcones are. They are a dynasty that is held past generations, and sometimes you got to get your hands a little bloody. And unfortunately for, you know, Papa Falcone, it was the mom who, for whatever reason, had to go down. She had to go away. Maybe she was also questioning him. But that it is a series of women, and I'm not condoning his behavior. What his behavior was wrong. But if we're playing in the idea, as the showrunner says, that Sophia is the closest thing to a hero that we have in the show, we have to follow that hero's journey. And in my mind, you want the hero to be uplifted, to succeed. But for the father to look her dead in the eye and say that Sophia questioned him one time and said, then why were there scratches? He could have come up with a numerate of lies. He had just told her he wanted her to succeed him in the family, to become the new head of the family. And in the very next day, on his birthday, on a day of celebration, on a day of happiness, he commits her to Arkham for asking a singular question. And so I say the audacity of men, that the power that they wield can strip you of everything that you've built and everything that you have accomplished on a whim, on a singular notion of what they deem to be right. And at that point, Sophia is now immediately carted off. And we can argue, I know the story is more about the Penguin and about Oz. And I gotta tell you, I probably would have done the same thing as Oz. Oz did not do that. I truly believe that he did not do that maliciously. I truly believe that he was looking out for Sophia and saw Sophia going down a path that would have ended up hurting her. And I think that when he said, you know, I would do it again, yes, it came from a matter of I want to elevate my station, but also I think he didn't know. He truly thought that Papa Falcone loved his daughter, and he knew everything that she was getting and where she was going, and I'm sure that he knew that Papa Falcone was going to choose her to succeed him. I think that in that moment, Oswald did not think that that was going to happen, and maybe that's not his fault, but I don't think anyone thought that it was going to go that far. But to see Sophia immediately carted off to Arkham, and I think it was such a beautiful thing and a horrible thing that the showrunners added electroshock therapy into the conditions of which Sophia had to endure. Because whether you guys know this or not, I could just be preaching at you guys, but there is such a systematic fault in the world and with electric shock therapy and women. It used to be used lightly, just as a thing. Oh, your wife is not wanting to do the dishes, electric shock therapy. Oh, your wife argued back at you, electric shock therapy. The way that men would abuse women, it was a way to abuse and to torture women to obey. You've seen so many movies like this where they glamorize that or hyperize that intensity of putting women into submission, you know, of beating women down into submission. And to see Sophia, I crumbled. I broke down from that moment on. I feel like, again, movies are supposed to make you feel something, and shows are supposed to make you feel something, and art is supposed to make you feel something. And I felt so much rage at this particular film, and I think it was so needed. You know, I talk about a lot that I don't really sink into shows unless there's an emotional backing to it. And as a woman, I felt so much ire for everything in this show. And it's interesting because Batman is traditionally, all Batman, you know, connotations and shows are very male forward. And it's always the male being the hero. Whether we're talking about, you know, Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, whether we're talking about Tim Burton's versions of Batman and the Penguin and all these characters, you always see the women as a side character. And that's something that I argue a lot, especially in talking about Selina Kyle, because in every iteration we've ever seen Selina Kyle, we never get to see her rich, deep, and interesting background. We always ever see her as the sexual creature for Batman. And she slips him one-liner and, oh no, Batman's figured out the entire thing, but look at her saunter off. There was even a clip from a video game where they changed the modifications to where Batman and Catwoman switched. And so you had Catwoman kind of just standing there, and you had Batman literally this over-exaggerated saunter. So women have always been just like a joke or like a way to make men seem better. And I love that finally, at the peak of this episode, after Sophia has been screaming for 10 years that she is innocent, after she's finding out that the entirety of her family let her go. And I want to be very clear about that. It's not just that they sided with her father, but there is, whether for fear or for personal gain, they let her go. They released a member of this family, a family that is, their whole identity is family first. They let a prominent figure of this family go so that they could save themselves and continued on with their lives. And so here Sophia is 10 years later, and we meet Magpie. We meet another villain from the comic book world. And just very quickly, because I don't want to belittle Magpie, this woman villain, but Magpie is a villain from the DC Comics who would steal items of jewelry that had to do with birds, that like had bird names, and that was her whole big thing. And she's been in a few iterations of it, but she has never lasted long. She's not a prolific character like Ivy or Harley Quinn by any means, but she is a villain that has had repeat issues and repeat appearances in the comic books. But to see Magpie there and to have Sophia hit the breaking point that the only way that she can get through to these people is to murder another woman so that she can finally be seen and finally be the villain that they all claim her to be. It just, like, pobrecita, you know? Like, poor baby, to hit that breaking point that the only way that you can be seen by men and by those in authority is to be the villain that they see you as. This episode, man. And so naturally, of course, absolutely, of course, at that point, I would also wreak havoc. Like, go get it at this point, of course. And I'm so ready for her to see Oz, because like I said in the last episode, or in my last little breakdown, you know, how dare Oz have this big speech about how, I guess the only thing I can do now is to prove to you that I am honest and that I care about you. And literally the very first second he gets, the very first opportunity, he leaves her behind and is off in the car. And I love that moment with the therapist where when she finally wakes up after, you know, the entire episode and after she has all of this, you know, realization, this wall of sleep, I guess, as she's reliving everything from the past, the one person that stood by her the most was her brother. But as she's having this conversation with the therapist, you know, she's realizing, you know, every man in my life has used me to benefit himself except for my brother. Every single person has used me and abused me and thrown me away, and you are no different. Because, you know, sure, you helped me out, but why? You know, here I am in your apartment, in your clothes. Everything that you have done has been a manipulation to get me here. I can't even trust you, because even you have ulterior motives. And what an isolated feeling that is, to know that there is truly not a single person. And so I think that moment, for me anyway, that moment where she steals her niece away, you know, this is a moment where she sees the future that this niece could have. She sees herself in this young girl, and she's setting her on the same path, essentially. But it's the innocence, you know, it's that seeing yourself in this young child and to, in your mind, save her from everything that you had to go through, while at the same time repeating those same patterns of murdering her parents, of giving this child a vengeance arc. I think that is both so beautiful, but also so painful in the oxymoron of it all, of the duality of it all. You know, that while you are giving this child one last deep and wholesome sleep in the jungle that is the greenhouse, inside her parents are slowly dying by your hand, essentially. It's just, this episode had so many deep and crucial layers in figuring out who Sophia is, and I think that that's so beautiful. And I do want to bring up again that idea that the showrunner said that Sophia is the closest thing that we have to a hero. And I also want to point out the difference of this hero versus the Joker Folie à Deux hero, because this is a hero that you see that she is broken, and you see that the mental illness is there, and you see that trauma and how it manifests in this cruel world that is put upon her. She was always part of this really negative world, but what happens when the world turns on you, versus the Joker Folie à Deux, where the world did turn on him, but the way that they portrayed it in this film, like, it just didn't have the same impact. It didn't give you those same, I'm with you, I'm ride or die with you, especially when push came to shove and we come to that zenith and that moment where everything comes to a head. Sophia chose to move forward because she is the hero of this story. And I feel like in Folie à Deux, the hero turned around. Everything that we had built up and built on this journey was thrown away. And so it didn't give me that same kind of feel. I digress. This video is getting very long. All that is to say is I think that now, in episode 4, now we are in the thick of it. I think now all the players have been assembled. I think at this point we are ready to move forward in this war, because at this point we are at war. The Falcones are gone. The Maronis now have their ring back, and you've got, it's the trifecta is coming. You know, we've got all of the figureheads ready to make their moves, and I think that now the world is only going to get darker. We've set the stage, and at this point it's beautiful. I am so into this show now, and I am so a part of it, because I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar is the identity of this show, and it is, I'm here for it. I love that Sophia Falcone is the hero that we all see ourselves in. And she is finally beginning to get her just desserts. And I love that she is getting it because she is getting it. If she wants something, she is taking it, and we see that in full form. Anyway, that was a 15-minute rant about so much about this show. I know that you guys have thoughts. That was truly just one idea or one part of this very large episode. Tell me what you thought about it. I'd love to know how you guys felt about Sophia in this episode. How'd you feel about Oz? I know we saw little clips of it. And how'd you feel about Papa Falcone in this show? I want to know all of your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. As always, like, share, comment, and I will see you guys for the next episode of The Penguin. I have no doubt in my mind that it's all downhill from here in the best way. I'll see you guys for the next one.